police told Marcus Garvey he couldn't speak to us and prevented him from coming to speak to us one night. We, of course, went in delegations and everything and raised such a ruckus that they had to let Marcus Garvey speak to us the next night. But when we went, I want you to hear me, when we went determined that nothing would stop Marcus Garvey from speaking to us. Now, how do you do that? How do you go determined to keep the powers that be from preventing your leader from speaking to you? How do you do that? Well, I'll tell you how we did it. Every one of us, including myself, went armed. We went armed. I had 2 guns on me. I had one in my bosom and one in my pocketbook. Little 30-inch specials. Pearl handle. I'll never forget my little pearl handle gun. You think you're bad, huh? Some of you think you're bad. We went, brothers and sisters, do you think we went there with a round of ammunition? No. We went with handbags of ammunition.
Queen Mother Moore, a leader of 3 generations of black political activity and cultural reawakening in the United States. And I suppose we should perhaps start from the early days in the South when things were happening which are rarely recorded for the present generation to know about.
I would say there never was a time that we were not in struggle. I don't think that anybody needed to come on the scene to lead us either. Innately, in our very bones, we wanted to be free, always. My father was a sheriff, a deputy sheriff in Louisiana. And my little brother, who was playing with a little rich white boy next door, the little boy began to cry, went to his mother, and when the father came home, he called my brother out and horsewhipped him. My brother's around 10 years old. And when my father came home and heard about it, he called that white man out and horsewhipped him. Now that's my background. Those were days before Jim Crow had actually been established firmly in the South. It was right after Reconstruction, and I can still remember my mother going to French Opera in New Orleans. I can remember my father and mother dancing the Shottas, and my father belonged to the Franz-Armee Society, and generally the people were getting along fairly well. Then, of course, came a reversal, a complete reversal on all the progress that had been made with the establishment of the Black Code Laws. The Black Code Laws had many restrictions against us. The Black Code Laws established the Jim Crow. It established the fact that our people couldn't vote, that unless you had $300 worth of property, you couldn't vote, or if your grandfather had voted, then you could vote. And it established the white primaries. Just in case you could meet your poll tax and all other qualifications, there was the white primary that you certainly could not do anything about, because there was a blanket law saying that no black could vote in the white primaries. At that time, we had black leaders of every sort, political leaders, rose in the South. We had black senators and congressmen in the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives. We had black lieutenant governor who had become governor of Louisiana. We had, in my lifetime, black custom inspector and black chief of police and black builders, construction builders of great buildings there, architects and engineers. And I can remember those. So that there was a great change, and the people began to fight back as best they could, the entrenchment against us. So by the time that Marcus Garvey came on the scene in Louisiana, we were already in struggle, and therefore it was not accidental that we joined in large numbers the UNIE.
Did black people lose some of the land that they had acquired in the course of the Jim Crow period?
Oh my goodness, yes, land. People would run off their land by the Klan, and the white people riding in their homes on the horseback, whipping the people, running them out of town, and tarring and feathering people, and there was great repression as far as the land question was concerned. We used to think it was only jealousy, but it was much deeper than that. It was to be jealous.
Because Abner Berry told me that in the 30s, when they were developing the line on self-determination, the black farmers in the South understood it as getting back the land that had been taken away from them.
That's right. You know, we had been promised land during the Civil War. There was talk about 40 acres and a mule, and also General Sherman had issued a field order, number 15, saying that we were given land 30 miles from the shore, the Atlantic Ocean inward, all along the coast of the Carolinas. So we were to have 30-mile land. So there was a great feeling of deception on the part of the government against us, and that we had been cheated, you see.
When the Garvey movement first came to Louisiana, was this through representatives or through Marcus Garvey himself?
Well, Garvey himself came. I don't recall if he had been invited. I'm sure he was by our enlightened people. Mm-hmm. But when he did come, the police wouldn't allow him to speak to us. And we heard about it. And we went there, as a matter of fact, and Garvey didn't appear. And we heard that the police had prevented him from coming, and everybody vowed to go back the next night with a guarantee that we were going to hear Garvey. So we went, all of us went well armed. Everybody had guns and big bags of ammunition. The police filed in the hall, and they stood up all along the side of the benches. Man to man, they stood on both sides of the aisle, and of course across the front of the platform. And the outer aisles, they stood. So when Garvey came in, everybody stood up and applauded. And Garvey said, "My friends, I wish to apologize to you for not speaking to you last night. But the mayor of the town, the mayor of New Orleans, permitted himself to be used by the police, the chief, to prevent my speaking to you." And when he said that, the police jumped up on the platform and said, "I'll run you in." And when he did that, we stood up on the benches, and everybody's gun came out. And with our hand in the air, a gun pointed. Blue steel Smith & Westerns, 44s, 38s, all kinds of guns. And everybody had a bag of ammunition. We said, speak, Garvey, speak. And Garvey said, and as I was saying, he went and repeated himself. So the police found out of Longshoreman Hall in New Orleans.
This was the Longshoreman Hall.
The Longshoreman Hall. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but in 1872, black men organized the first longshoreman organization.
Huh? This was a union.
Yes. And controlled the entire waterfront. Nothing came in and out of the port of Louisiana without going, including the customs director, commissioner. But what they came through blacks. And of course, you know, they used to put on the White House, on the jailhouse, the names of the whites who would support blacks. And it was a real campaign like the MacArthur area.
You mean it was that? You mean if they saw a white person who was working with the black community, they would ostracize them?
Oh yeah. Oh, they would more than they tore and feathered. And also they put their names up, and they couldn't get jobs and so on. Those who voted for blacks, you see. So we didn't have that prejudice. They made the prejudice. You see, the white people made the prejudice. That certain little element of whites made the prejudice. And I can remember where this was done.
How did Jim Crow affect the education that black people were receiving in Louisiana? Was there a decline in the quality of the schools and the education during that time?
Well, we had, our schools went to 8th grade. And those who went to 8th grade became teachers. My cousins were teachers. They went to 8th grade. I went to 4th grade. So I had a reasonable amount of education back home.
You only went to 4th grade?
Half the way.
Wow.
And my grandmother used to always say, "Gal, you had too much learning to be cutting up like you do." Once you had that kind of learning, you was expected to have a certain decorum. And so I was always conscious of that much learning until I grew up to the point where I realized that I was ignorant and had to do something to cure my ignorance. So I had to study. But more of our people went to the Catholic schools than to the public schools. And there the nuns were very diligent in teaching us our ABCs, how to read, how to arithmetic, and so on. They taught us very thoroughly, the nuns, very conscientious. And so that those of us who were fortunate enough to go to Catholic school at that period, since then, the Catholic school senior does not hold my respect. I'll give you one little example. In New Orleans, if you go and look at the record for 1955, look in the newspapers in the advertising section, you will find that they had 2 schools, the Catholics did, 2 universities in New Orleans. And the white university, they had alphabetized the courses that they were giving in both universities. But just one little example, and I could quote more. But under M, they got the M. In the black university, they had music. In the white university, same Catholic university, they had marketing, management. You see? Mm-hmm. So this is an indication, I think this tells the whole story of the difference. Mm-hmm. And they always had white nuns over our black kids in Xavier University. Now, In St. Catherine's School, we had black nuns under the school in which I attended. And the reason we had St. Catherine's School was because in the Catholic Church, and I can recall that just as good, my mother and I went to church that Sunday, and I was only 5 when she died. And now I'm 75, so 70 years ago, and it's like it happened yesterday. I can recall when Mama went to church, there was a screen in the church saying colored sit here, for colored only. And we had a pew in the church, but that was disregarded. It was disregarded. And I can remember my mother sitting back in the back seat weeping in the church. And incidentally, this is interesting about her weeping, because she had taught me it was unladylike to show your feelings. And even when I was swinging once, somebody was pushing me against, my father had fine horses and stable, beautiful stable. And in the stable there was a nail sticking out. And somebody had made me a swing, and pushing me sideways, a nail went in my leg. And all the way to the hospital, she was telling me not to show my feelings. And I didn't cry with that big nail, big rusty nail that stuck in my leg. A little bitter thing.
Were your parents looked upon as leaders in the community? People who were looked up to?
Oh, my people had enjoyed great respect. My father was a man amongst men. Beautiful, powerful man. Beautiful man. Do you know I haven't seen anybody as beautiful as my father in my lifetime? He was so beautiful. And my mother was very dark, and my father was the son of a white man who had raped his mother. So a thing that I always feel terrible about, the rape of the black women. Almost every one of us was raped. Our women and young girls. And so this complexion that I had, I want reparations for it, because I had a right not to have been tampered with. My complexion has been passed on to my son, and he's passed his complexion on to his children, which is injury beyond any there's no compensation in the world can repay you for changing your complexion. Having your complexion forced on you, you see. Also our names. We demanded reparations for the white man imposing his names on us, taking our names completely away from us, then forcing us to nurse his babies. We nursed his babies from our breasts. All of this, the injury has been horrendous to us. Then after, of course, doing that, during the time that I mentioned that our people enjoyed a little freedom in this country, after the Emancipation Proclamation, where the Union Army deserted our people, and the North withdrew its forces from the South, leaving us to the mercy of the people under whom we had been slaves. And so after that, not only had they imposed citizenship on us, this is something very serious. They imposed citizenship upon us instead of allowing us to, giving us restitution, because after all they had changed us in the course of slavery from an African to a Negro. Then, of course, they imposed their citizenship. And after they imposed citizenship upon us, which some people might think was magnanimous after all he's giving you citizenship, which actually was a violation of our human rights, because we should have had a plebiscite. You see, there should have been restitution, reparations, a plebiscite for us. There was none of that. So that the citizenship is illegal. But then after they did that, what did they do? They enacted their black code laws to deny us the very benefits of the citizenship that they had imposed on us. You see? So here we were citizens without, we had the burden of citizenship without any of the benefits. That's happened in our case. That's why we have to go way back to our enslavement in order to get a correct position from our people. And anybody who glosses over that whole slavery period will never get never have a correct analysis of our status in the United States. But in spite of all of that, our contributions have been something else to this country.
When you first heard Marcus Garvey, what was the main message that came across?
Well, at the time I heard Garvey, I was, of course, in business and doing very well. But I wanted to be free. I wanted free. I never was satisfied to be enslaved. Garvey brought us a message the likes of which I never heard. He told us about the splendors of our ancient history, culture, of the great kings and queens that we had been, of the riches of Africa, and of the kind of people that we were. And we were just inspired to no end. All of us wanted to be black then, just like then we recognized what had happened to us. Prior to that time, I used to feel that, to be white would be wonderful. Not poor white. I want that very clear. I want to be rich, rich white. No black woman went with a poor white man, but all the rich imposed themselves on the black woman. There was even, this is after slavery time now, where they threatened the husbands, ran them out of town when they wanted a black woman, ran the husbands out of town, lynched them for black women. Most all that lynching was for black women, because no black man is raped no white woman. They haven't had nothing like that. As a matter of fact, those rich white women used to get nude and call the black chauffeurs in the house to hand her a towel or give her something, and daring to look at her and daring not to. That's right. If he didn't look at her, it was an insult to her, and if he did look at her, God help him.
I've had people in the South tell me that there was a lot more of that kind of thing going on in the big house than anybody has ever written about, with the white women enticing the black men, and that there were babies that were born which were handed over to black women to raise.
That's right, they were paid.
Yeah.
And black men were paid too to marry beautiful black girls so that the rich white man could have them. And I know black men that walked around with diamond stick pins and diamonds in their teeth, that gold filled teeth with diamonds setting in it, and diamonds on their walking cane, and diamonds in their bulldog collars, just paid for by millionaire white men, multimillionaires. There was never no poor. They had sporting houses where only rich white men went, with black women in them. So beautiful black women. And so all of this talk about us being beneath him is a lie. It's a lie. He'd sneak out every chance he could get to come to black women, you see.
That's what Malcolm X said in that autobiography.
While he persecuted the black man.
So when Marcus, the message that Marcus Garvey brought was very much about the whole history of Africa.
From Cape to Cairo. And that really impressed me a great deal. I came up north and went to the launching of the Black Star Line. Garvey bought ships, and oh my God, just to think that we too could have ships on the ocean. And of course, we had no idea of the intrigue that was in his organization. You can just imagine. Here's somebody speaking about the freedom of Africa. And you can imagine who owned Africa. German, the Dutch, the French, the English, the Italians, everybody under the sun had a piece of Africa. And you can imagine their agents would be sent into Garvey's organization. And that's what really happened. But I want to tell you that even to this day, we have Garvey chapters all over the country, still meeting. Even until this day, they have not killed the spirit of Garvey. Then they had all of their trained colored people. You know, there was a time we were colored. And then, of course, we became Negroes. First we were cool, darkest, colored, niggers, Negroes. Then we became crime in the street, and now we're the other. Call us the other.
The other.
The other. That's what they call it us now, the other. You see.
Did you know, was there much talk of Africa in your community before Garvey came?
No, only what the slaves, like my grandmother had told us, that was handed down from their grandmother.
So Garvey just opened up a whole new vista.
He opened up a whole world for us, taught us about Africa. It was music to our ears. And then we understood the whole business of slavery and what had happened to us, you know. So of course I wanted the freedom of Africa, and from then on, that's been my total concern. Freedom of Africa.
Let's see, you were in business for yourself in the South.
Oh yes.
What led you to come up to New York City?
Well, as I said before, I came up for the launching of the Black Star Line steamship, and I was so inspired with the thousands of people who were there to see the launching and to go on board the ship, and everything. It was just inspiring. Garvey was up there. I just felt that it was good to be up here, because I'd be hearing all those kind of speeches that I never heard in the South, you see.
Who were some of the other people in the Garvey movement, other than Garvey, who made a big impression on you as great public speakers?
Oh, you had Mr. Bryan and Cumberbatch and a number of people, number of great orators. But Garvey topped them all. Nobody came to hear anybody else but Garvey.
And so you were living in New York City during the 1920s?
Yes.
Were you living in Harlem?
Yes. Yes.
Were you still in business for yourself at this time? Or?
No, I wasn't in business here in New York.
Did you, when you came up to New York, would you feel that the condition of the black community was more favorable in New York than in New Orleans?
No, I was disappointed when I came to New York. And I thought that the black people didn't have, the homes wasn't as nice, and, you know, the manners wasn't as nice. And I was very disappointed. But I stayed on, going back south frequently.
Did you ever get involved in, like, politics in the Democratic and Republican parties over there?
Oh, yeah. Here in New York? Yes. Oh, yes. I didn't know anything about politics. But I felt there was a black man that was running, and I felt he should be supported. And he was running on the Republican ticket. So I went to the big shots in the Republican Party, the head man downtown. I wanted to see them and see what they intended to do for us and so on. He gave me a lot of, talk about Lincoln and the Republican Party being the friend of the black people and everything. So I went to work for this black man, J. Dalmas Steele.
J. Dalmas Steele. He was the head of the Elks.
He was a great black man. Well, anyway, he was cold black, too, beautiful black. We worked so hard that the Democrats couldn't even keep their workers on the corner. We worked so hard for J. Dalmas Steele. And after the Republican Party, after the election day, the Republican Party had a victory dinner reception on Broadway. And the white women said, now when you ladies get ready to have yours, that we weren't acceptable to their victory dinner on Broadway, And that struck me then. I knew I was in the wrong thing. And it was then that right during that campaign, right after the Republican campaign, that my sister Eloise came to me and told me what was happening in Harlem. I was living on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me that there's a big demonstration for the Scottsboro boys. And I said, who's having the demonstration? She said, the Reds are having it. And I said, I wonder how the Reds, who are the Reds? I didn't even know who the Reds were. But anyway, I called everybody because I'd been active and people knew me, and I said, come on, let's go. And so about 7 or 8 people went with me to see this big demonstration. When I got there, I'd never in my life seen such an outpouring of people. I saw signs, death to the lynchers. Oh, that inspired me to no end. And I saw a young white woman carrying a sign, death to the lynchers. I walked up to her and said, no, you give me that sign. She said, you can walk beside me, but I must carry the sign. I'm the black woman. I must carry that sign. So I took the sign from her and I walked around and all over during the parade, and then I got back to the place where the speakers was, and I joined up with them. I didn't need any coaching. I didn't need anything. This was what I wanted. Freedom for my people. Free the 9 Scottsboro boys. And every stop, a death to lynchers and everything. That was just what I'd been looking for. So I joined in. I didn't question anything. I didn't care what it was. It was doing that for us.
So that Scottsboro case was just a tremendous event.
Yes. And it brought in a lot of our people who saw action, you see, for the first time, anybody moving on our issues.
Mm-hmm. How did the Depression affect Harlem? Was it... The
Depression was something else. Soup lines, Father Divine came on the scene during the Depression. He really saved Harlem, I think, because he gave us meals for 15 cents. Most delicious meals. And there were lines around the block waiting to be served in Father Divine's mission. So I think that helped a great deal. And then I joined the fight for welfare for the people. My sister Eloise, at the same time, was fighting for milk for the children at a school she was interested in. And there was a Mrs. Freeman, who was the principal of the school, who helped her in her struggle. And Eloise went to Miss Fannie Hearst of the Hearst newspapers and got Miss Hearst to give milk. And Miss Hearst eventually put up a milk station in Harlem where all the little children could go and get milk free. And so, well, these were the days. We just fought. We fought for welfare, and we fought for WPA. and we fought for Social Security. The communists led all those fights. The communists led the fight for the soldiers' bonus. It led the fight for unemployment insurance. It led those fights. And of course, those were things I wanted, and I joined right in with them. Then there was the Martinville 7. There was Angelo Herndon.
Right.
Angelo Herndon, who was given a death sentence in Georgia for leading a big demonstration there. He was charged with sedition for bread. So we joined all of those fights for the freedom of our people.
Because there are people who say that in terms of that the Depression had a devastating effect on the community in that it so many of the men were unemployed and it increased the problems of the children and things like that.
Of course, yes, indeed. That was the women couldn't get welfare, the husbands was in the house and all that kind of thing. The social workers, the whole system divided up our people, you see.
When you went into the Communist Party in Harlem, was the organization dominated by whites?
All whites in Harlem, all positions, everything was white. Everything, all the leading people in the coast. They had James Ford, he was the chairman of the Harlem Communist Party, but everything else was white. All the people were white. And all the other, the finance secretaries, all the money, nobody ever saw any of the money. All of the head of the literature department and the head of every important department was white. White women, just flocked in Harlem. We couldn't do a thing, we couldn't learn how to do anything for ourselves, for the whites.
Because there was Abner was telling me that there was some tension surrounding the fact that black women felt that white women were coming in and trying to take the men in the party.
They didn't try to take the men. The white woman took the men. They didn't try to take them. They actually took them. Of course, there was resentment on the part of the black women, and the Communist Party really never made much inroad amongst the black people. They didn't allow two blacks to meet together. Always we had to have a white in our midst. And yet they had, all national groups was broken down. They had the Italian and the Italian Party and the Italian Commission. They had the Jewish Commission, Romanian, Estonian, Latvian, Yugoslavian, every mission, the Swede, the Finns, every national group had its own commission, and the Negro Commission had whites in it. The party had a thing, a sing-song thing on that, Negro and white unite and fight, Negro and white. There had to be whites in all of our meetings.
Were the black members of the party able to organize to change that?
No, no, indeed. Everyone that tried was expelled. I think I'm about the only one in the party that resigned. They didn't expel me, I resigned. I had been Ben Davis's campaign manager. Ben Davis didn't even mention me in the book. All the wonderful work that was done. Ben didn't know two people in Harlem when he ran for the city council. He didn't know anybody in Harlem. And we brought all those people around him and really had a campaign. The Communist Party wanted to take me out of the campaign a week before the election. Told me I was whipping up too much enthusiasm among the people, that I was going to demoralize the party. And we had enthusiasm was so high until we had candidates standing up saying, I know you're going to give Ben your first choice vote, but would you please give me your second? The candidates asking for second choice vote. You see, so high was our committee would go around singing all over Harlem. We had songs made up. Yes, yes, select that Davis. Yes, yes, And we just, it was just something to behold. Nobody's ever seen a campaign like that campaign for Ben, and I was the campaign manager. And the fact that he didn't mention me shows the terror in that Communist Party.
What did the terror stem from? How did they have people so intimidated?
Well, first of all, you agree to the self-discipline yourself. You see, you want freedom, and you feel that here's an instrument to get it. So you subordinate self. It's really a process.
So it was a thing where people like yourself felt this was the only thing that was out there fighting.
It was.
And you
went
through, you took certain steps in order to be part of that.
That's right. It was the only thing. And it had a position which inspired me to know on us that we were a nation within a nation, you see. And then later, of course, you know what happened. It relinquished its position on us.
One of the things that I came across, and I'll get the reference for you in my files, was a fight to get rid of a racist principle.
I participated in all the struggles to get rid of racist principles out of Harlem. But then I find that the problem is deeper than race. Of course, at that time, you see, for a long time I was a Negro. And I fought as a Negro. I joined the Communist Party as a Negro. Now, I had to come to the realization that a Negro was a concoction of the old slave master, a trick, to get us to do ourselves in. We don't need the slave master over us any longer. We will do the job for him. Now, better than he could do it. So that being a Negro is a condition. It's not just the name. When I realized that we were going wrong, I went to the Communist Party. I really wanted the Communist Party to discuss the thing and analyze it. Let's see. But the blacks wouldn't touch it. Bette Davis and none of them would touch it. And the whites couldn't touch it because they said the blacks hadn't brought it up. And you know you go according to rank. And so those blacks on the Central Committee, if they didn't bring it up, the whites couldn't bring it up. So I kept getting bile developing in my stomach because I could see we were going wrong. Now, incidentally, you know the Communist Party calling us black. If they left that Negro there, I'd like to know what was their, what kind of discussion they had, you know, and change it, because that's a great change for them. Mm-hmm. But we're not black. Now, I don't know what they're going to do because we leave in that black thing. You see? It's
interesting. Richard Moore, who was also active as a leader of the Scottsboro campaign, has a very similar outlook in terms of this whole term Negro and
well,
so
we trained Richard Moore. We trained Richard Moore. And my sister Eloise taught Richard. He had those books there and he wasn't even going into those books, trying to get out anything. Eloise forced him. And he put Eloise out of his store 5 times. She had to suffer that indignity until he finally began to write that book. Eloise.
This is what, when is this taking place?
He should have dedicated that book to Eloise. But you know you can debauch history. You know that?
Well, it's certainly been done in this country.
You see in his book her pictures on the front page there with some others. But Eloise is responsible.
What was Eloise's last name?
Moore.
Moore. Eloise Moore.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Eloise she had one of the greatest minds. We used to call her our Socrates. And it broke our heart when Eartha Kitt was given a precious time to talk with Einstein when Eloise was the one that should have talked with Einstein, not Eartha Kitt, with her little kitten self. I mean, Eloise, who had a mind, who I'm sure could have brought us back something from that conversation.
Huh. When you were active in the party, was there a lot of educational work going on? Was a lot of studying and reading?
Yes. Oh, yes. For which I'm ever grateful. I'm grateful to the party. It taught me the class character of this society. It taught me the science of society. And so that And that we have to have in our endeavor to try to get free. And I'm encouraging all of our youth and our black people to study so that they will understand, you see, because without that we could never make it.
Mm. Of the people active in Harlem, the black leaders in the party, were they strong individuals and people of depth and power on their own, or were some...
One of the unique things about our people that in spite of being Negroes, we are giants. You take the men like A. Philip Randolph and Du Bois and Walter White, Kelly Miller, and all of those men. They were all great men in their own way. Ben Davis and James W. Ford, all great men. Winnie Winston, but they're Negroes, and they can't make it as Negroes. They just can't make it. No, they couldn't, I should say, because most of them are dead and gone.
It's interesting when because sometimes you will read things and they give you the idea that the black people in the party were just yes men. And speaking to Abner Berry, a person that brilliant, I couldn't imagine him being a yes man.
No, they were not yes men. They made their contribution according to the way they understood. But you see, a Negro fits in a situation. That's it. A Negro doesn't dare out to be creative. He can't be creative once he's subjected to somebody else's ideology, you see. So that's what it is. A Negro is his own destruction. He doesn't need the white man to destroy him anymore. It's a bad condition to be in, a very bad condition.
What were the schools in Harlem like during the 30s, during those fights that you were involved in?
Oh, they were terrible. The white teachers used to call our children niggers in the classroom. Yes, they did. I had a white principal, assistant principal in a school in Harlem the other day asked me, please come and help us. He's paid now, and I'm not on anybody's salary, and come and help them to get the children. He said it's so disheartening to see our children come into school in first grade, all bright-eyed, eager, hungry to learn, and go out grouping in sixth grade. That's his own school. So this is the condition.
What about the tenant struggle that was waged during the 30s?
Oh yes, those were great struggles. Putting the furniture back in the houses after the landlord put the people out, sick people and everything. People couldn't pay their rent. Those were terrible days. And on Sugar Hill, where everybody thought they were better than everybody else, I organized Sugar Hill. The first strikes we had, I organized them. And 555 Edgecombe, 672, St. Nicholas, all those big houses up there, 49. We organized those houses. So it was quite something. And I was organizing the houses when I joined the Communist Party. I was right in the process of organizing the houses. And we had to fight to get nurses in Harlem Hospital. We had to fight for decent treatment. Every day, there was struggles. Every day, we had to fight to get nurses in Bellevue. We had to fight to get black doctors in Harlem Hospital. It was something. Even to put clean sheets on the receiving table, we had to fight for that. There were dirty, bloody sheets, and they didn't mind putting you right on somebody else's blood.
Were there nationalist leaders in Harlem during the 1930s who were active?
Yes. Oh, yes. Great nationalist leaders. I have some of the names written down here.
There was, Sufi.
Sufi and Arthur Reed and
Ira Kemp.
How do you know about that? That's wonderful. You've done your homework. And Mother Phillips and and my sister Eloise, and my sister Loretta, 3 sisters of us, and myself, and there was a great number of us. Of course, there was a period now I wasn't nationalist. I became an integrationist. But still, I was out there with the nationalists fighting. You see, that's one thing. I never did
Was this a period
lose
when
all of my nationalism.
Was this a period when the nationalists and the party people worked together, or were there was tension?
They never actually worked together. They was always tension clashing. They never wanted us to be nationalists or to have any nationalist concepts.
Were the nationalists able to organize effectively in the community?
Well, they enjoyed certain prestige among the people. They weren't so much about organizing as they were talking from the street ladder. The corners, you see, that was their method of enlightening the people. So this way they really reached hundreds of thousands of people.
And so this was something in the spirit of the people, but they weren't in the position to organize mass struggles at that time.
They didn't. The mass struggles was organized by the communists.
At what point did you begin to change your ideology and your outlook?
When I realized that we were going the wrong direction. I tried from 1945, actually. I realized that we just couldn't keep going. As a matter of fact, before then, before 1945, I recall somewhere about 1940s, in the early 1940s, I went to El Browder and talked to him about what I thought, and told him that I felt that we weren't achieving the goals that we should be. I mean, the results from our goals we weren't achieving. And so they sent me to Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. In 1943, they sent me to Detroit. Right after Ben Davis's campaign, they sent me.
To work there.
Yeah, and the people just felt terrible about it. One woman told me it was like uprooting a big oak tree. This is what she said.
Wow.
But I could see we were going wrong. And then, as I said before, you know, I had to write leaflets and things like that, and my position was changing, and I began to question this whole thing about Negro. Well, at first I thought it was just a word, that we were just being called Negro, and it was incorrect. It was politically incorrect. And then when it struck me that we weren't just called Negroes, but actually Negroes were made out of us. We were, in fact, Negroes. Oh my God, I nearly died.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll?
That one.
Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me?
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
Bile began to pile up in me. Oh, and one day that bile came out. Oh, I was vomiting from my mouth on the wall, shooting back and forward, nothing but fire. And then I went out like a light. I don't know how long I stayed there because I couldn't get a discussion. And I went to everybody trying to get some reasoning, get a position. And of course, all the time I doubted myself. I always had an inferiority complex toward those members who were so well equipped. And they were. They could just espouse Marxism, Leninism, and all of those profound teachings, and I couldn't do it. I never mastered any of it, but I did get a smattering, enough to know that we needed to know that. If we were going to get our freedom, we need to know it. But I couldn't get anybody to talk to me because I wanted a big nationalist, black nationalist movement with Paul Robeson at the head of it, which would have assured us that we would be connected with labor, and I could see that we could win that way.
Yeah, it's such a shame that didn't develop because it would have.
Yes, you see, we'd have had the correct orientation. I wanted a communist philosophy, but I wanted us to have a chance to organize our people. And I knew as long as we kept putting whites in, we'd never get organized. But they began to look upon me with suspicion. And incidentally, at that time, also the CIA was trying to enlist me in their work and told me to name my price. And I wanted freedom. I've never given in to any of the enemies coaxing in any way whatsoever. But I told them, white man, I would spit in your eye. They asked me. And then the CUDAR committee called me to tell them about the teachers un-American activities in the school. So I went down and I said, well, it's a good thing you called me because I know of un-American activities in our school. I said, that's fine. I said, but where are the people? Oh, no. I said, this is just a subcommittee of the CUDAR committee. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I got to have, not with all this stuff I know, I got to have the press and all the people here to tell you about the un-American activities going on. Say, do we understand you to say you're not going to testify before this committee? I say, oh no, you don't understand me to say that. You understand me to say I'm dying to testify.
I'll never forget reading the testimony of Paul Robeson before that committee, the way he turned it around.
Yes.
Before that guy Walter.
Right. Oh, Paul was a great man. It's awful. Awful what happened to Paul. Oh, it's awful. Oh, it's awful. We've had so many good people destroyed. So many. And a lot of white people was destroyed. Brought up on charges of white chauvinism and all that when it didn't have to be. You see? Because everything was organized wrong. Everything was organized wrong.
Mm-hmm. What about your social life when you became a party member? Did you associate mainly with party people, or did you also continue your friendships with people outside the party?
My whole life was the struggle. I say 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. That was my life. That was my social life. Mm-hmm. Was the party. I loved the party to death. I loved the party. I did anything the party asked me to do. Mm-hmm. In the midst of great struggles that I was conducting, the party took me out, sent me to Detroit. And people said it was just like uprooting a tree to take me out of my work.
Why did they take you out?
I don't know. They had their reasons. But I was the campaign manager for party candidates. Mm-hmm. And incidentally, maybe you've heard of him, Ben Davis. I was his campaign manager. And the 3 people in Harlem didn't know Ben, but I put him in. And he was surprised himself that he won. He was very surprised. The party was shocked. But I had been active organizing houses and putting tenants back in their houses and everything, and the people knew me. And they really rallied around Ben's campaign. Ben wrote a book and didn't even mention my name in the book, which is just something incredible, you know, when you think about it. As a matter of fact, when Angela Davis was running here just a year or two ago, they showed my headquarters, my campaign headquarters, and I was standing in front of the headquarters with Ben Davis and Reverend Ethelred Brown, one of the ministers that I had to support him. And they put, underlined, that's the party's paper this last campaign. It said, here's Ben Davis, Reverend Brown, and what do they call me? An admirer or something like that.
They didn't mention you?
Didn't mention my name.
Why was that?
Yeah. Well, because they didn't like it because I left. I resigned, you know.
When did you resign?
I resigned in 1950.
Why did you resign?
I resigned because I couldn't get them to discuss the question that was bothering me uppermost on the term Negro and the fact that they had relinquished their position as a nation, that we were a nation. And I wanted to talk about those things, you know. And when I talked with the whites, they said I made sense. And but have I talked with the black comrades, the Negro comrades? When I went to the Negro comrades, they wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't touch it because they had fear, you know, the fear of being politically incorrect, you know, and not unless the whites had presented it, they were afraid, and they wouldn't do it. So they left me no alternative than to resign, you see, because I couldn't go any further the way I was going. I knew I was going wrong. Absolutely wrong. It's detrimental to my own interests as a Negro. Yes.
I saw an article just a week or so ago in which I saw that you were honored by a tribute by a coalition of black and African American organizations. Have you been very active in this?
Oh, Lord. I've got so many tributes, I have no place to put them. I've got so many plaques, so many from all walks of life. Yes.
So you continued your activities after you resigned from the Communist Party?
Oh, I redoubled my efforts. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. I don't have a minute for myself. All over the world they call me. I've got to go to London in February. Big reception is done. I'm going to be the guest of honor. I've just come from London 3 months ago. They call me all over the world.
Groups,
Africa.
African groups?
All, yes.
What led you to become interested in the Communist Party?
Well, that was a funny thing. I was in the Republican Party, and I had just helped to fight for one of their candidates, and I had a terrible experience with the Republicans. They told us that now that they were having a reception, a victory reception, and when you colored people get ready to have yours, we'll help you with it. And that just shocked me, you know, when she said, when you colored people get ready to have your victory reception. So just at that time, there was a big demonstration in Harlem, and my sister came and told me, it was right after the election, and she said, you here in the house, and said they're having a big demonstration in Harlem. I say, who? She said, the Reds. I say, Reds? For what? She said, for the Scottsboro boys. And so, and I thought, at the moment she said that, Where were the Reds when all the other lynchings was going on, you know? But be that as it may, I went and rang the doorbells of the people I'd been working with in the election campaign and told them, come on, let's go. I hear that Harlem is ablaze with people fighting for the Scottsboro boys. So they came. I brought 8 people with me to the demonstration. And when I saw the demonstration, I had never seen anything like it in my life. There were thousands of people, but nearly all of them was white. Not many blacks at all. And one little white young lady had a sign, "Death to the Lynchers." So I took the sign from her. I said, no, you allow me to carry this sign. You can walk by my side, but I must carry the sign. So I went around marching with the demonstrators and came back and signed up and began to work like beetles. I mean, I really worked like beavers, rather.
Mm-hmm. What did you do? What
sold literature, the pamphlets, 200 and 300 a day. I sold those little pamphlets. There was only 2 cents, and I sold the Daily Worker, and I did everything I could. But I thought I was in the Communist Party, but I wasn't. I was in the ILD, International Labor Defense, and I worked on the picnics and the whatever I could do. I couldn't do enough, really. I worked night and day. And it was only when I went to make a report for the picnic tickets that I had that I find out that I wasn't in the Communist Party at all. I thought I was in the Communist Party, but it wasn't at all. So one of the people in the Daily Worker said, you asked me what branch did I belong to. When I told him what branch, he knew that was the ILD and not the Communist Party. And he said, you're not a member of the Communist Party, comrade? I said, well, I thought I was. He said, well, you come here. I'm going to sign you up. I was signed up that way. But the other people in the Communist Party was waiting for me to get ripe, they said.
What did they mean by that?
Well, they don't just recruit, or they didn't just recruit anybody. They let you be tested first, you know, according to. But my God, I was working so hard, night and day. I just can't imagine anybody feeling that I wasn't right, you know, right for the Communist Party. But they was afraid of me because I had a Cadillac car and, you know, appeared bourgeois to them.
Were you still in business at that time?
No, I wasn't in business.
And was your husband still was in Harlem with you?
Yes.
And your sisters?
Yes.
So you kept together as a unit. Were there blacks members in the ILD and the Communist Party?
Yeah, there was some, not too many. Then men, there was some brothers there. Of course, they all had white women, and that was a disgusting thing to me. I had to choke on this all the time to see that they couldn't have a brother in the movement unless a white woman would grab him. And many of the brothers would leave their wives, children, to cling to these white women. And I complained about that several times, but that put me on the suspicious list, you know.
Suspicious?
Yes.
Yeah, because they thought you were an enemy of some kind?
Well, you know, I was nationalistic, they felt. And
well, how did they explain it?
They didn't bother to explain it. They'd rather rationalize on the fact that my ideology wasn't as it should be, you know, for integration.
And that you were a nationalist?
Yes, because I'd come out of the Garvey movement. They never did really trust me.
My name is Earl Pinto, and I am the guest host of the Flo Kennedy Show. We are greatly honored to have as our guest today a great woman, a freedom fighter for African people throughout the world. Her name is Queen Mother Moore. Welcome, Queen Mother.
Thank you.
How did you become known as Queen Mother Moore?
Well, that name was bestowed upon me by the African students, first of all, as a result of my years of activities in this country. They gave it to me. And when I went to Africa, to Dr. Nkrumah's funeral, the chief heard about me, and he sent for me to come to him. And I went, and he said, I'm going to make you officially Queen Mother of the Ashanti. And he initiated me Queen Mother. But I was Queen Mother before I went to Africa.
I understand that you sent a petition to the United Nations in, I think, 1957 for reparations for the black people in America. Explain something about that to us.
Yes, the petition called for us to go back to Africa, for those who wanted to go back. And for those who wanted to stay here, there had to be certain indemnity given for the people who wanted to stay, the people who wanted to go.
What kind of indemnity?
Well, I was asking for $200 billion.
$200 billion to indemnify?
Yes, for the injury that we have received. The injury as a result of our enslavement.
Okay, that's for our 400 years of enslavement.
Yes.
As reparations, we requested $200 billion.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, when you sent this petition to the United Nations, what kind of response did you get?
I got very good response. But he told me that we needed a member nation to introduce the resolution, since we were not officially members of the UN.
Is this with your work with the Republic of New Africa?
No, that was not. I went as a member of the Ethiopian Women, the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women.
I understand that you founded that organization.
Yes.
And what was that organization about?
To save our men from execution. They were being executed at the rate of 2 a week almost. There was somebody being executed.
Then unjustly executed?
Yes, we felt they were unjustly executed. And we tried to save some of them. We did save some.
Mention a few.
From execution. Labat and Poret. We saved those. We saved Jenkins. We saved another brother.
Well, there was a number of people that were saved from execution because they were unjustly charged with crimes.
Yes.
And where did this take place?
In New Orleans.
Okay, you're from New Orleans,
yes.
I understand. Okay. And then you also worked with Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
Tell us first something about Marcus Garvey.
Well, I was first brought into the Marcus Garvey movement by the fact that I understood that he was to come and speak to us in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And we went to the meeting, and lo and behold, he didn't come. And we heard that the mayor refused to allow him to come. So we were very incensed about it and got a delegation to go see why. And then it was guaranteed that Marcus Garvey would come the next night. And the hall was packed with people. And everybody went with ammunition.
They had guns?
They had guns. Everybody had guns. Blue Steel, Smith & Westerns, German Lugers. We had plenty German Lugers because, you know, the war it was boys from the war and everything. Okay. And I had 2 guns with me. And they all had guns and ammunition, a bag of ammunition. Everybody had what you call a suitcase today we used to call satchels
What was all this?
of ammunition.
Why were you so armed?
Because we was afraid the police would stop him from coming again.
Okay.
And we wanted to protect him. And so we went. 3,500 people was in that hall. And so when Garvey came, we applauded very much. And he said, "My friends, I want to apologize for not speaking to you last night, but the reason I didn't speak to you is because the mayor permitted himself to be used as a stooge by the police department to prevent me from speaking to you." And when he said that, the police jumped up and said, "I'll run you in." And when the police did that, everybody jumped up on the benches. We had benches then. And took out their guns straight up. The guns were straight up in the air. "Speak, Garvey, speak." And Garvey said, and as I was saying, and he went and repeated himself. And the police filed out of there like little puppy dogs with their little tails between their legs. Every policeman filed out of the hall.
Okay, after which I understand you started a chapter of his organization?
No, I didn't start a chapter. We had a chapter going down there.
Okay. And you purchased stock in
the Black Star Line, yes.
What was that? What was the Black Star Line?
Black Star Line was ships that Marcus Garvey was buying.
For what purpose?
To go to Africa. To go to Africa and to trade with Africa. He was going to trade with the West Indies and Africa.
How did the work of Marcus Garvey influence your life?
Oh, very much so. Oh, yes, because he taught me about the glories of Africa. I never went to sleep anymore since then. Never. I did much study since then of my own. To denegrize us, change our minds from European minds. You know, we have no idea the condition that we're in, the psychoneurosis that we suffer. We suffer a terrible, terrible blight. We don't know who we are. We use European names, and we just are comfortable with our condition. We really don't know who we are. We have no idea. We're captive. And we're absolutely comfortable with this situation.
You once told me that you were fighting for the freedom of Lizzie Williams.
For Lizzie Williams, yes. Lizzie Williams, bless her heart. She's so dear. She just sent me a Christmas card with $5 in it. She's so wonderful.
She was sentenced?
She was sentenced to 218 years in prison. She's in her 70s.
Why was she sentenced?
For perjury in Alabama. For perjury. Her boyfriend stole 2 chickens, and she swore that he was with her. And they charged her for that. For lying, you know, that he was with her instead of stealing the chickens, and then charged her with accessory to the crime.
I understand that you was instrumental in breaking Jim Crow in the baseball league.
Yes. You know, at one time there was Jim Crow in the league that blacks couldn't play, and the people, especially the Jewish people, was fighting Jim Crow in the big league. And they asked me to head the committee to fight Jim Crow in the big league. And of course I was a Negro then. I used to be a Negro. And everything sounded good to me. The Negro fights Jim Crow and that kind of thing. And I fought Jim Crow. And I didn't realize what I was doing. If I hadn't been a Negro, I wouldn't have fought to get a Negro in the big league. I wouldn't have did that. I would have fought to get a team in the big league. one of our baseball team. We had great teams. I dismantled the teams. My work dismantled the teams. We had neighborhoods where our ball games would play, and the children was happy, and the old ladies was selling pies and things at the ball games, and children was shining shoes, and we had hotels, and it was something when they had a ball game in town. But all of that's dismantled. All of that, there's no more hotels or anything. You see, Jim Crow has done away with all of that.
Queen Mother, you said that you were a Negro at the time, and you wished to, and you wanted to, you wished that you had put teams instead of individuals into the league. Was you instrumental in getting Jackie Robinson into the league?
I was interested in breaking Jim Crow, and yes, Jackie came as a result of that, and Statue Page and all of those people. I didn't know them, but they all was employed as a result of breaking Jim Crow in the big league. That's right.